Thanks for spending some minutes with me today. Looking
My
forward.
pleasure. Oh, me too.
Let me see here. Perfect. So, um, would be interesting to know. I know a little bit that you have brothers that make music. So, my first question I would like to start off. You're coming from a musical household, maybe parents playing music or listening at least.
Well, yes, absolutely. We
Hmm.
grew up. We grew up in a musical household. My father learned how to play piccolo and baritone horn in an orphanage in Buffalo, New York area as a child, and that created his passion for music, which he followed through his entire life. So when my brothers and I were born, we had a house full of instruments, literally, because my father had managed and led um, bands of every description, dance bands,
Hmm.
concert bands, marching bands, you name it. And so we really had our pick of what instrument we wanted to play. Well, my two older brothers had their pick, and Pat chose the clarinet, and John chose the cornet.
Hmm.
And when I came along, my father just figured I need a drummer, so you're going to be it. So I was directed to the drum set and grew up playing. My mother played the string bass.
Oh, really?
We had a we had a family band, and we played for over 10, maybe 15 years as a family band in our community, all the different functions and weddings and so on. And
Hmm.
it was a great experience because we were playing the music of Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Benny Goodman and Tommy Dorsey, as well as the ethnic Sicilian folk music that is my father's heritage. My father was born in Sicily and
La
came to
Barbara.
America.
Hmm. I
Yeah,
see.
we
Hmm.
came to America in 1910. So yeah, we learned music
Beautiful.
at a very early age.
And that was around what age you were playing those jazz hits already?
Well, I started at 5 years old on the
Hmm.
drums and continued. I also was learning saxophone, clarinet, and saxophone at the same time,
Hmm.
which I did play throughout grade school and high school. But I
Hmm.
left that once I went to Berkeley. I just left the reeds behind and just focused
Hmm.
on drums
And the
primarily.
bass was covered by the mother, so it was. They needed a drummer, right?
Exactly. Well, my mother wasn't in the band yet. Actually, it's a cute
Uh
story
huh.
because we did our first gig as a family band with my father and my two brothers.
Hmm.
And when we got home, my mother was waiting. She says, I'm not going to stay home while you guys go out and have fun. I want in the band." So
Hmm.
my father made a chart for her of the four strings on a cardboard
Hmm.
and all the positions. And my mother hung it up over the kitchen sink. And every night when she was washing the dishes, she would just stand there and memorize the positions.
Oh,
And that's that.
she had to read the bass lines, or she could make them up on the spot as well.
No, no, no. She was memorizing the positions
Ah, I see.
on the fingerboard for the bass,
Hmm.
where each note was and which finger could access it. And so she learned from that. And then when it came to reading the arrangements, those arrangements had a specific bass part, but she could also just look at a chord symbol and decide which notes she could play as well.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Hmm.
Hmm.
Interesting. And playing professionally as a teenager, I guess, or even before, making some money at those family gigs.
Oh yeah, no. My father started bank accounts for us, and at the time, I think we're talking 1955 here,
Hmm.
and so we were making my brothers and I were making $5 a piece for each job, and that was pretty good. It was going in the bank for us. Yeah. All
Hmm.
we cared about really as children was to get our hands on these little bags of coated almonds that they give away at weddings. That's all we cared
Hmm.
about.
I see. And at that time, when you why the drums, you heard somebody play it, or was it kind of
No, no.
felt natural to you, or?
I mentioned previously that I was directed to the drums by my father because he had my brother Pat on saxophone, my brother John on cornet. My father could play the keyboards, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
accordion or piano, whatever was available.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had the nucleus for a band. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you think about Louis Armstrong's, Hot Five, right? There was no bass player in that band, so I mean, it was really essentially just that New
Mm-hmm.
Orleans style, combo. And so, with the addition of my mother, it just made it that much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any teachers that you had along the way that maybe are familiar to us? Drum teachers.
Not back then, but once I got to college, I studied with
Mm-hmm.
Alan Dawson at
Mm-hmm.
Berkeley and also Fred Buda, and they were both amazing teachers. I learned so
Mm-hmm.
much. I mean, the lessons I learned from Alan, I still use. Well, I retired from teaching recently, but I had
Mm-hmm.
used previously for 28 years teaching at Cal Arts here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So you really couldn't do better as a student to have Alan Dawson as your instructor.
Mm-hmm. And was it later on in life you had some recommendations, or it just happened because you were a great player and doors opened that kind of way, or how was it in your biography?
Yeah, I wasn't really a great player, honestly. You know, it was just I came up at a time when there were ample opportunities to uh, to just to play. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you could play 5 nights a week anywhere and gain experience and improve as a player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think my first professional job. Um, well, my first professional job actually came out of Berkeley because one of my teachers was working with a singer named Frankie Randall, who he sang like Frank Sinatra, that style of tenor, standard tunes, swinging book,
Mm-hmm.
that whole thing. And he had a month in Las Vegas at the Sands Hotel with Buddy Rich's big band.
Mm-hmm.
And so he asked if I wanted to go along and make this gig for a month in 1960, January 1968.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I jumped at the chance, mainly because my brother Pat was already on Buddy's band. He had joined
Mm-hmm.
Buddy Rich's band the
Ah, I
previous
see.
April.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first big break, I guess. You know, I got my name in Downbeat, and people started to hear me. But it was the experience of playing on stage night after night with a big band like that, and hearing Buddy and being around that influence of how you actually should be accompanying people
Mm-hmm.
in a big band. That was a big change in my approach to playing. You know, shortly after that, I was drafted into the military here in the States. I served for 2 years in the
Mm-hmm.
Army, and I was in a band in the Army, a post band, nothing special, but just nice, good good players and safe.
Jazz band or something else?
Well, it was marching band primarily.
Marching.
All military bands are marching bands, but
Mm-hmm.
yes, there was a big band, and we had little groups that we made of the players, and would go out and do jobs, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And of course, later on, most people maybe at first think of like the late Bill Evans that you had a chance to play with,
Hmm.
and there you played. Correct me if I'm wrong, with Mark Johnson on bass. Was
Yes, absolutely.
that was the line? And and what I would like to know if you can tell us a bit. I mean, I saw, of, of course, you played with a lot of bass players, also with Eddie Gomez or Darek Oles. Is it changing the way you play when there is another bass player next to you, or you're doing your thing no
Oh
matter?
no, of course it changes you if any other instrumentalist is in the band.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. We're all different, right? So yes, every bass player is gives me the opportunity to do some exploring in a different direction, and they all
Mm-hmm.
have each one of them has great talent and great qualities that are different and unique that you can latch onto and go into a different direction. One thing that they all have in common, every bass player you mentioned, and every bass player probably that I've worked with in my life, is their upbringing was similar in terms of the artists that they listened to, and the journey that they took
Hmm.
to find their center of the beat, to find where they're going to play that quarter note. And
Hmm.
for a drummer and a bass player, that is essential. If we don't lock in on that aspect of the making music, the quarter note pulse,
Hmm.
and I don't mean to imply that it has to be played every beat, but we both have to feel that pulse at the same place.
Yeah.
So that's something that they all shared in common. John
Hmm.
Patitucci, I mean, every bass player, Rufus Reed,
Hmm.
they all have that solid foundation to the quarter note pulse that makes my job easy.
So it's possible that that you notice that you start to leave out some things because it's already covered by the bass, for example,
Yes,
or maybe you
definitely.
have to add a little bit of something in between.
If you think about the genesis of the concept of Bill Evans' trio, which is a more understated rhythmic approach,
Hmm.
Paul Motion was doing the job of playing the foundation of time, which allowed Scott LaFaro to not have to walk forward to the bar, to be a little more free in his
Hmm.
expression. And
Hmm.
that in turn, Bill, of course, was reading the roots out of the chords, so that contributed to what
Hmm.
Scott's note choices could be. You know,
Hmm.
and in my particular journey on the drums, Scott LaFaro was a huge influence on me because of his approach. So now I try to bring that sensibility to the drum set.
Hmm.
At the same time, though, I have to be fully aware that my job as a drummer is to play time and to supply time. But there's a way to do it where you're not absolutely dictating the time to the other players, and that's
Hmm.
what I try to do with most bands.
Hmm. And how did the gig came about with the Bill Evans? Did you guys meet and
Well,
started
it
playing?
really I went to New York in 1976, so I had been on the road with Woody Herman's band for a
Hmm.
year. I did 4 years with Chuck Mangione. I had a
I
lot of
wanted to I wanted to ask. Excuse me for interrupting. Are you on that "Feel So Good" thing,
that
Chuck
happened
Mangione?
right after I left Chuck. That happened. Yeah, I'm on Land of Make Believe and
Uh
Chase
huh.
the Clouds Away. He had some success prior to that, but of course, Feel So Good was a huge hit
It
for him.
just came to my mind. I used to listen to him.
Yeah, sure,
Hmm.
it's a big hit.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, but so when I got to New York, people were already aware of me, and then
Hmm.
I started to gain a bit of a reputation in New York. I was working with a lot of people. I played with Jim Hall, played with John Schofield, played with Phil Woods, Bob Brookmeyer. I mean, lots of different people of notoriety in the jazz world.
Hmm.
And one of the musicians that I worked with was a guitar player named Joe Puma, who Bill knew since 1955. And Bill asked Joe if there were any drummers around, and Joe said, "You should listen to this guy." And so Bill and Helen Keane came to a gig I was doing in New York with Toots Thielmans
Hmm.
at a club called Hoppers. And the next day, I got a phone call from Bill's manager to please come to the Vanguard the next time they play and try out for the gig. So that's that's kind of how it happened. Word
Hmm.
of mouth.
Yeah. And Toots, you played with Toots on guitar or on the harp already?
Both. He was playing a
Uh-huh.
lot of guitar back then,
Hmm.
and whistling, of course, and the harp. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
Toots is amazing.
Yeah. Always left us playing.
Oh, me too.
And I read Tony Bennett, another station. You
Yeah,
went through. Was that big orchestra things or small groups in a nightclub or
both. Both.
both?
With Chuck Mangione, I first got my feet wet with playing with orchestras because we did a
Hmm.
lot of orchestra concerts, and
Hmm.
so I was comfortable in that atmosphere. And with Tony, yes, we would occasionally have, in Las Vegas, there'd be a big orchestra, or Atlantic City, an
Hmm.
orchestra. But then he also preferred the trio because he liked the portability of it, and he liked to be able to just move when he wanted to move with the music.
Hmm.
So he actually preferred the trio in a lot of
Hmm.
settings. But yeah, that came right after Bill passed away, and saved my life financially for one thing, because I had a brand new baby daughter and
Mm-hmm.
bills to pay.
Mm-hmm.
But Tony, it's funny. Yesterday, I was nostalgic for Tony Bennett. I pulled out my Spotify and put on a whole bunch of Tony Bennett songs and listened to them.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. And through my friend Ye Huang, I found out that you guys, I mean, you, Alan Pasqua, Derek Wallace, and Eddie Daniels went to China a couple of years ago for a big tour. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. It would be interesting to find out what
I
was that.
Yeah, I can tell you it was the best tour I think I've ever done in my life, because he did everything first class. You know, airline tickets, hotels, and he made the tour. He spaced out the job so that we could actually enjoy China. We went
Mm-hmm.
all over China, and we
Mm-hmm.
experienced different cities and different provinces, and all kinds of different food. I mean, it was just fabulous. And every concert hall was absolutely spectacular, just spectacular. It was a
You
great
guys
trip.
played big places, right? I saw one.
Very big places.
Yeah.
Every one was a huge concert hall. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they have the best facilities you can imagine over there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great tour. And Eddie, of course, I mean, that band was just a blast, with Eddie and Alan and Dark. We had a great
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm. And you play regularly trio with those guys, right? Alan and Tarek.
And I wouldn't say regularly, but as often as we can.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly love playing with both of them. We played
Mm-hmm.
just recently here in Los Angeles. We've got
Mm-hmm.
another concert coming up in Sun Valley, Idaho, in December. It's not often enough, if you're asking me, but I mean that's just the nature of the business, Simon.
Not 5 nights a week anymore. That's
I,
right.
I wish it was.
Right. And is there something that stuck with you over the years, like things that you do for to warm up or to practice just to keep to stay in shape?
Can I just
Besides,
can I just take a walk away for 1 second?
please do.
Thank you. Um,
Sure. The new drum set arrived, right?
I don't need any more drums, Simon. So you were asking if there's anything that stayed with me. I'm
Yeah, like some routine, some practicing. I mean, being on the
oh,
road or playing with that guy and with this gal, and it's kind of.
what I do is I carry a practice pad with me and a pair of sticks, of course,
Hmm.
and I have usually two, three, excuse me, different books of snare drum
Hmm.
etudes and
Hmm.
exercises, things like that, just to keep my hands loose
Hmm.
and warm. That at this point, I've been playing the drums now for geez, almost 70 years. I'm
Hmm.
74 now, and I started when I was 5. So it really isn't a question of it's a question of just maintaining
Hmm.
a certain level of ability. The creative part of it, that's a whole other thing.
Hmm.
And when you're not playing very often, then that is what usually starts to suffer more. The
Hmm.
connection between your hands and your brain. If you keep your hands limber, at least half of the problem is solved. Then it's just a question of being able to focus again, and allowing yourself to let the music flow through you rather than to be overthinking it, to be
Hmm.
constantly thinking about what you're playing, just to let it happen.
Hmm. And stylistically, were you always drawn to one kind of style, or you like all kinds of music and
Yeah,
with projects
yeah.
and
I mean, as long as
styles?
it had an improvisational content, That
Hmm.
I was okay with it. When I was in New York, I was in a fusion. I played with Larry Coryell for a while in New York, and I
Hmm.
also Miroslav Vitus had a fusion band that I was in for a while. I enjoyed both of those.
Hmm.
Big bands. I really, yeah, as kids, my brothers and I grew up listening to a wide variety of different jazz artists and different
Hmm.
ensembles. So we pretty much liked everything. We liked it all.
Hmm. And what was it working like with Bill Evans? You guys played so much that everything happened naturally, or were there some clear instructions to follow to make things happen? I wonder.
Well, there was never any rehearsal.
Hmm.
So with Bill Evans, you would audition and he would say, "Well, come on out, come out for a couple of weeks. Let's see if it's going to work out."
Hmm.
But he was trusting his judgment by selecting you that you were going to fulfill, his expectations. And really, all you have to do is keep your ears open with an artist like that. That's all you have. Well, that's all you have to do really with most jazz bands. If you keep your ears open and you're more focused on the other musicians as opposed to yourself,
Hmm.
I think you're going to succeed. Provided you've done the homework and you can
Hmm.
play at a certain level.
Hmm.
So no, the instruction from Bill came strictly from the piano.
Hmm.
By virtue of what he would play, that's where the instruction came from, and you knew immediately what you should do based on what you were hearing.
Hmm.
And I have a feeling that Mark Johnson would tell you the exact same thing.
So, so you had the chance actually to challenge yourself or the music, or you were not trying to please anybody, or Bill, um,
Oh no,
with your playing,
I was
just making
definitely
music.
just no, I was trying to please Bill, of course, but I was challenged in a couple of areas. In that,
Hmm.
first of all, Bill had a completely unique rhythmic feel,
Hmm.
and he didn't go for the obvious accent points in a measure that a lot of jazz musicians would do. So
Hmm.
by design, his language was different. A lot of displaced ideas from Bill Evans,
Hmm.
where a rhythm would shift from the same rhythm would shift across the
Hmm.
music. Dynamically, I had to figure out a way to make the energy
Hmm.
consistent without overpowering, piano, bass, and drums. Those are things I welcomed, and I loved all of that. And quite frankly, Bill gave me the opportunity to express myself as much as I wanted to. I could play as loud as I needed to.
Hmm.
You get a lot of freedom with a great jazz musician like Bill Evans, but along with that freedom comes a measure of responsibility to the music.
Right.
And as long as you're honoring that responsibility and you're honoring the music, then you're going to be okay.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating to hear all the time that people who played with great musicians like Bill Evans, Miles Davis, there were basically no instructions. Just they made sure they had the right people around them to make it happen.
Yes.
It's, I think, most natural way. Yeah.
Well, I think so too, because I mean, I've experienced band leaders from time to time that try to dictate
Mm.
precisely what they're after because they've already got a preconceived idea about what the
Mm.
end result's supposed to be.
Mm.
That's counterintuitive for jazz as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
But I'd much prefer the musicians like Alan Pass was that way, you know.
Okay.
Eddie Gomez is that way.
Mm.
Most of the players that I worked with were like that.
Mm. I saw that you played also quite some times in Italy, if I'm not mistaken. Is it a country you like to go to play, or you have certain kind of connections to what you like, on playing in Italy? And with I just found some stuff where you play there.
I played there quite a bit, Simon, but it was really just circumstances.
Okay.
Obviously, I have a connection to
You
my
speak
roots.
Italian?
Not very well, no.
Just with the hands?
Sometimes, but my roots are in Sicily.
Okay.
But it just turned out that at a certain point, I think the first time I went to Italy on tour was Chuck Mangione many years
Oh,
ago, and
okay.
then of course with Bill we went twice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had experienced the audiences. Um, After Bill, there was a period where I didn't go there at all, and then I think Joe Locke called me to go over one time for a tour, and
Mm-hmm.
I made friends with the promoter, and I went back on another tour, and then Eddie
Mm-hmm.
Gomez asked me to go on a tour, and Rosario Giuliani is another musician I met over there. I played with
Mm-hmm.
Dado Moroni. You know,
Right.
you know how this business works, Simon. You're in it, so you meet people, they hear you play, they like what you're doing. You get a phone call, and they say, "Hey, can you come over and do it?" It could be Germany, it could be Italy, it could be France. It just depends on the artist and where they have the work.
Right. Right. How about Switzerland? Have you been here? Yeah.
Yes,
Where you guys
yes.
played here
Well, we were there with Bill. I'm sure.
with Bill Heavens?
Yeah, in Zurich. I'm sure we were there. Sure we
What
were
year
there.
would that have been?
Well, either 79 or 80. I have to pull out the itinerary. I've got
Yeah,
it
I
right.
wasn't alive. I'm sorry. Otherwise, I would be there. would have been there.
I'm sure most of
I
your
missed that.
audience. Yeah,
I
great.
missed that. Yeah,
Mm.
that probably was. Well, I have no idea what was around. Some clubs that are not around anymore in Zurich. You don't remember the name of the club you played with Bill Evans, like Wiederbar or Moods or something like
I
that.
I'm pretty sure the itinerary doesn't have a venue. It just has the city
Mm.
and
Because I'm in Zurich. That's why I'm
yeah,
asking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I remember Zurich
Mm-hmm.
explicitly. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you taught many years. That was kind of what you like drum students, I guess.
Oh, I had
Or
drum students. I taught a jazz history class.
mm-hmm.
I did independent study classes with several guitar players
Mm-hmm.
and bass players.
Okay.
Very interesting projects, actually. One of my guitar students, Tim Fisher, um, well, he wasn't my guitar student. One of my students, Tim Fisher, is a guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
He did a project where he codified all of the comping language of Miles Davis's rhythm sections from 55 to 65, and the impact that there were set comping patterns that those rhythm sections used
Mm-hmm.
in a call and response manner with the band that are very interesting to to notate and to understand because it's all part of that same process of communication on the bandstand. That's just one example of some of the duties I had there. But yeah, mainly drum set students,
Interesting.
ensembles, of course. I had
Mm-hmm.
ensembles that I had to direct, and the jazz history course I took great pleasure in because I was fascinated by it right from the start, and I learned so much myself doing
Mm-hmm.
the research to be able to teach my students.
Yeah, I think the very important thing is the what you mentioned, like when you have an or like a rhythm section or that you work with, because if it's just individual players, they can play great, but once they come together, as you mentioned before, with where's the beat, where's the chord, and where do I lay my cymbal down or bass note? I think this is certainly amazing to have you there, telling them what to do, at what
Yeah,
time.
that's what they
Mm-hmm.
come for, right, Simon? I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
paying a lot of money to get the experience
Mm-hmm.
that you have. They want you to share that experience with them, so hopefully they can get something from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. What are you doing this week? Any? How was the shopping yesterday?
Pretty normal, yeah. My wife
Normal
and I,
stuff.
we the reason I was late was we went for a long walk this morning, and I just walked in the door, and I was like, so I
Sure.
apologize for that. But
Mm-hmm.
our life now is very tranquil.
Mm-hmm.
I only work in Los Angeles, and
You
we
live in town there.
yes,
Yes.
we spend our days here together, walking, hiking, and just
Beautiful.
working
Yeah.
around the yard. So,
Yeah. I loved the heat when I was there. Definitely.
but I have my drums nearby here. Is there a way to change cameras? I don't think there is.
Never tried that so far. You see,
That's
wasn't
not
I
a
wasn't
problem.
improvising too much on that tool.
You're in my drum room. So my drums are right here. And when our chat is finished, that's my next stop today. I'll be over there working on
I see. I don't want to stand in the way. I think it's time for some drum rolls now.
right.
Yeah. Well, it was unbelievable fun for me, Joe. Thank you so much for being that casual and let me let us see inside your life in music. That was great.
It was my pleasure, Simon, and best of luck to you with your music as well.
Yeah. Hope to stay in touch with you, Joe. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye.